All right, just to be respectful of everyone's time, I'm gonna go ahead and get a slow rolling start here, and I'll let folks in as we continue. Ellen, are you ready to rock and roll?
How to unmute. There we go. Yes, if I can figure out how to unmute, I am.
So we'll be talking about PFAS chemicals and lead surface line replacements and everything that falls under that. And we're really grateful to have Ellen join us this morning. And thank you to everyone who joined us early Monday morning to um, listen to this talk. Before we get started here, I just want to give a quick bio to our speaker, Ellen Kohler. She is the Director of Applied Research and Programs at the Water Center at the University of Pennsylvania. Her work focuses on collaborating with municipal and utility water managers to find sustainable solutions to the water quality and quantity challenges they face, ranging from managing increased stormwater flows relating to climate change to developing equitable financing policies for water infrastructure investments. She brings to the center more than 25 years of experience addressing the legal, regulatory, and policy context of water and natural resource management. Her career has included serving as a trial attorney for the U.S. Department of Justice's Environment and Natural Resources Division, handling wildlife litigation, uh, representing the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians on treaty fishing rights for your consulting business, in partnering with the US EPA to further the adoption of integrated water planning while at the University of Maryland Environmental Finance Center. She holds a master's from the University of Michigan School of Environment Sustainability and a JD from the University of Colorado School of Law. She was born and raised in the Schuylkill River watershed, spent 15 years in the Lake Michigan watershed, and now resides in the Cobbs Creek watershed, a tributary of the Delaware River. So we are very grateful to have her here this morning, and thanks to our small cohort this morning, but should be some good information. And again, I'll be letting some folks in as they join. So let's give it up for Ellen.
Thanks, Mason. So can everybody hear me okay? I've got about 20 slides I'm going to run through. We are a very small group, so you should feel free to ask questions as we go along, or if you'd prefer to wait and put them in the chat and we will look at them at the end, that's totally fine, whatever works for you. But as Mason said, we're going to chat about lead service lines and PFAS for the most part right now. So those current challenges for your drinking water systems. So let's go ahead and share. Okay. Okay. So you should be seeing my slides, right?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so just a little bit of an introduction to the Water Center itself. We do sit at the University of Pennsylvania, and we have sort of 4 core areas that we work in: water equity, water resilience, water leadership, and water innovation. While we sit at the University of Pennsylvania, we work across Pennsylvania throughout Region 3 for EPA. We have some projects in the Great Lakes. We have some projects have a project in Colorado. And some of our work has to do with national policy. So more of a regional focus, but definitely do work across a broader geography as well. Our work right now includes a project where we are helping support communities in accessing the funding for water infrastructure that was put out through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And that funding to do that technical assistance is coming through what are called the environmental finance centers. So there have been those environmental finance centers in place for a long time. They're now also using those same structures and added a few more to help get this funding out to communities. So the one for Region 3 is based at the University of Maryland's Environmental Finance Center and works across the states there, well, states and jurisdictions. So it's Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, and the District of Columbia. So our goal with this regional water technical assistance program is to get more communities with applications for federal funding, get more quality water infrastructure in place, and improve the reliability of water services. The full team for this water technical assistance project, which goes for the next 4 years, we're about 1 year in right now, includes this set of partners. As I mentioned, the University of Maryland's Environmental Finance Center is the lead. The Water Center at Penn is the lead in Pennsylvania and in Delaware. And then we have these other project partners that support the work as well, either because they have direct engagement with small water systems, such as the RCAP programs, including RCAP Solutions here in Pennsylvania, or have some other kind of a specific technical assistance that would be helpful. We think will be helpful for the communities we're working with. Our principles for this technical assistance include that we are going to provide direct assistance to communities. We want to support them in identifying concrete steps to accessing funding, and that we're going to coordinate and collaborate across all of the water technical assistance that's available. So if a community is already working with PA Rural Water, for example, but there's a gap that we can help fill, we will work with Pennsylvania Rural Water with that community. Our menu of services includes these 5 categories. We can engage with a community at any stage in the process. So we could be working with the community on building partnerships and engagement, or we could be working with the community just on the funding and financing piece, or we can engage across the full spectrum of the menu of services. Across the 5-year project, we are engaging with 40 to 60 communities a year across the entire region. That engagement can range from a couple of calls where we're just helping provide some information about available funding to deep engagement where we're meeting regularly with those communities to address a specific challenge or a set of specific challenges. So, for example, I've been working with Avondale Borough for more than a year. That includes the categories of planning and assessment and partnership and engagement. This is a very small borough that had paper maps of its water infrastructure. They have drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater, but they did not have digitized maps. So we are working with them to acquire digitized mapping that both the staff and their engineers can access easily. We also did some camera work on the wastewater system, so they have a much better idea of what's going on with their wastewater system and identified leakage that they can now address with some grant funding that they have in place to remediate those leakage issues. And we're working with them on their lead service line inventory. We engage with the staff regularly. We also keep the elected officials up to date. We've pulled in partners to help when it's on topics that are of particular interest. For example, in terms of stormwater management, we have a watershed group that has been instrumental in identifying additional grant funding to bring to the community to implement rain gardens and to do some community engagement work. And then we've also been helping with training to do field work. So training around the software to go out into the field and get the GIS information that they need to create the digital maps and identify the various kinds of water infrastructure they want to map. At the moment, we meet with them twice a month. So that's a pretty deep engagement. So now I'm going to turn to the 2 topics for today. One is the lead service line inventory, and the other is PFAS regulation. When Mason and I first talked about doing this webinar, I thought I would focus mostly on the lead service line inventory, but there have been so many developments around PFAS in the last several weeks I felt that became an important element because many of you are if you're managing a drinking water system, you are probably considering both of these issues at the same time. You don't get to deal with them in isolation. So first, with respect to the lead service line inventory, as I hope most of you already know, there is already a deadline of October 16th, 2024 to submit a lead service line inventory for your system. I hope you are familiar with that. And we'll run through some of those resources that you can use to for that inventory. But in case, just to get everybody on the same page, what we're talking about when we're talking about a lead service line inventory is what might be lead on the water system side and what might be lead on the customer or private side of the system. So here we have the water side. So I'd like to believe you know what your mains are made of and that that's not a remaining challenge, but it could be from the main all the way here to the curb stop where you could have some lead in the system. And that could be part of your public challenge that you need to deal with. And then there could also be lead coming from the curb stop into the home, particularly around here where it comes into the building itself. So the lead service line inventory, you need to collect information about both the public side and the private side in order to be able to complete the survey. This graphic provides sort of a step down of how that might work across your community. So, and sort of some of the costs that we're seeing around the different kinds of strategies for doing lead service line inventories. So if you start with records that you have to, ideally narrow, hopefully substantially narrow the kind of information you need to collect. So if you have pretty good records about both the utility side and the private side, then that can, reduce the number of, you'd be able to fill out a lot of the information on the inventory and move on to the remaining records, buildings for which you don't have as complete a records. Many communities are using a survey strategy. That could be an online survey. It could be a survey that they are mailing out to community members, or it could be a door-to-door survey where you potentially either have folks from your water system or maybe from a partner organization work with you to knock on doors to share that in the survey information and collect that data directly from the homeowner or building owner. There are other strategies that you could use to be able to continue to narrow and collect information about those lead service line inventories. But these three are the three that we are generally working with communities on right now: the historical records, the customer survey, and identifying partners that can help with a door-to-door survey. Pennsylvania DEP has a bunch of resources available on their website. The link is here on this slide, and we can share these slides around afterwards. But there's a ton of information on their website, and I think it's highly unlikely that any of you have the time to go through all of the resources that are available there. But suffice it to say, there are some great things there if you need to find something specific. Obviously, the spreadsheet for doing the inventory and completing the information is there. But there are three resources that I think are probably going to be at least helpful for getting you started. One is a document and they're relatively short. One of them is the non-lead verification training aid that has examples. It has some graphics and some, some checklist kind of thing that you can look at you might find examples that are most relevant to your community. So, and that's not a terribly long example, but it'll help you get at least started in terms of thinking about the strategy that you might need to pursue for your inventory. There's also a historical record review checklist that can help you. This is an image from that checklist. So that might help you think about what kind of records you might have and or what records somebody else in your community or in your county might have. So one of the things that we've done at the Water Center at Penn is working with grad students to map out historical housing stock age. We got that information from the county planning department in one county that we're working in, so that we are able to map out all of that, all the housing stock across the county, knowing that homes that were built early, since 1991 were not built with lead, since it was banned at that point. So that immediately takes those buildings and residences off the need to have an inventory work done, and can help. I don't know. I'm a very visual person. I love having maps. And so just being able to visualize where in the community we actually need to be working can be helpful, or might be helpful to you as well. And there's also a community engagement plan template. So I would say there's not anything that's really rocket science there in terms of how to engage with your community, but it's, there's good information there with good reminders about best practices for engagement, and, maybe some text that you might want to include either on your website or on mailers or in other kinds of communications you might want to engage with your community. So with all of that in mind, let's move on to PFAS, since there's been a lot of activity in April around PFAS. And particularly, I want to talk about these 3 regulatory updates. There is a new Safe Drinking Water Act standard that came out in April. PFAS was designated as a hazardous waste under CERCLA in April, and there is revised guidance around destruction and disposal with respect to PFAS. These 2 graphics may provide provide a little bit of an information about where we are across the country in addressing this challenge. In the map on the left-hand side, the communities that are in darker blue, or I should say the states that are in darker blue, already had standards in place before this new Safe Drinking Water Act standard. So we are looking to a lot of those states, and that includes Pennsylvania, but some of the states like New Jersey and Michigan have been further along in terms of what they've been doing, what they've been learning, and trying to bring that learning back to Pennsylvania communities. So there are some things that we can share directly with communities in terms of lessons learned already, but we're very much in a still learning mode. I think all of us are. The map on the right is from the U.S. Geological Survey and shows sort of concentration and number of systems identified to date in terms of PFAS detections. I want to be really clear here. This does not in any way, shape, or form represent testing of all water systems in the country to show where they're in, and then therefore showing where PFAS is occurring in those drinking water systems. This is based only on sampling that has been done to date. So we're, likely to see that as more and more people do their monitoring, more and more systems do their monitoring, we're going to see more PFAS detections is what we anticipate. But we already know that there are significant concentrations in our region, in the Mid-Atlantic region and in the Great Lakes. I'm going to guess that many of you are familiar that PFAS can enter into our environment from lots of different sources. And it's important for us to keep that in mind, both in terms of the fact that this is not a drinking water system. This is not a problem generated by drinking water systems. It's a problem that drinking water systems have to respond to. And understanding how that impacts ratepayers is really important in terms of, trying to identify ways to pay for treatment. But also that, this is going to have to be multi-strategy approach in terms of managing PFAS in our environment. So while we're looking at drinking water systems at the moment, there's going to be lots of different parts of our communities that are going to have to be looking at how they're engaging with PFAS, either in the things that they're creating or things that they're using, and how they're disposing of that. So in terms of the drinking water systems, under the new MCL from the Safe Drinking Water Act, drinking water systems have up to 3 years to monitor and share their results. And if those monitoring levels show that their system is above the standard, then they'll have 5 years to achieve compliance. There are some treatment technologies that have been identified as being effective, including these 3 here: granular activated carbon, ion exchange resins, and membrane processes. And with this announcement of the MCL that came out earlier in April, there's also an announcement that there's funding available, and the amount allotted to Pennsylvania is $37 million. I do want to note this is not new funding, but funding that is specifically targeted at PFAS, and can be used. That what's different about the way that they the language around the funding announcement here is that it can be used. This 37 million communities can apply to use it to do monitoring of their systems. These are the new regulatory standards for the regulation that came out, addressed 6 different PFAS and chemicals. PFAS, PFO and PFAS are at 4 parts per trillion. And some of the other kinds of PFAS are 10 parts per trillion. And then there's a mixture of, a hazard index for a mixture of PFAS chemicals. So these are the standards that would have to be tested for and then met if your system does test as having a contaminant level above these standards. In addition, EPA designated PFOA and PFAS as a hazardous substance in April under the Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation and Liability Act, or CERCLA. This is final action still needs to take place, but it's going to include full liability from cradle to grave, and take into account that there's a high cost of disposal, including transportation costs. And there's still a lot of uncertainty around the presence of chemicals in various disposal, in various things that are getting disposed. And where we're going to see, obviously, the major issues are chemical manufacturers, textile mills, landfills. Probably the one that you guys are most going to be interacting with the most is landfills, potentially, and site cleanups. What's not mentioned here is that, if you manage a wastewater system, the solids from that wastewater system are also going to need to be managed as, because if they have PFAS or PFO in them, that will now be a hazardous chemical. Finally, EPA updated its guidance with respect to destruction and disposal, as it's required to do under the National Defense Authorization Act of 2020. So what this guidance did, it identified technologies that have a lower potential for environmental release. So in other words, when you're trying to destroy or dispose of the PFAS, ideally we're going to use a technology that's not going to then release PFAS back into the environment and impact things like, drinking water systems. So the 3 technologies that have been identified as having a lower potential for environmental release are underground injection, permitted, sending the materials to a permitted hazardous waste landfill, and thermal treatment. There, obviously with the underground injection, there's a concern around where is it being injected? Is it going to be contained? And are we making sure we're not impacting drinking water sources? With thermal treatment, the concern is whether there are going to be releases into the air that will still have high PFAS levels. So there's still work to be done to make sure that those kinds of strategies are not releasing high levels of PFAS back into the environment. And there are some emerging technologies that this guidance also noted as well. EPA also shared a technology evaluation framework and some tools for looking at cumulative impacts on communities in terms of PFAS contamination. So in the context of all of this, as I said at the very beginning, our work is about trying to, particularly in terms of these challenges, is trying to get funding out to communities to address these challenges. Much of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act funding that was identified for water resources was flowing through PennVest, our state revolving fund program. And I just wanted to share, there's a recent announcement of some new projects for PennVest, and wanted to share these 3 examples to show you how PennVest has been engaging with communities to identify funding to address them. So, excuse me, Erie County Water Authority got a mixture of both grant funding and loan funding to deal with some service line challenges that included lead goosenecks. So they're going to be, so not all of the work included lead, but the lead remediation allows them to have access to some of that principal forgiveness, also known as, grant or principal forgiveness funding. Wampum Borough got a $1.6 million grant that's for lead service lines. So they'll be able to do the work that's outlined here with that grant funding with respect to lead service lines and eliminate the possibility of contamination for their public system. So just want to note that normally 100% grant funding is not available through PennVest, but because of the structure of some of this Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act funding, it is going out in some instances as 100% grant funding. And the last one I have here, Derry Township, has to do with PFAS challenge. They received a mixture of grant funding and loan funding to install a biosolids drying and gasification system to reduce their PFAS compounds entering their wastewater treatment plant. So here's this combination of our drinking water and wastewater challenge that we have with respect to PFAS and PFOA. This is, this is work that they're not required to do right now under the Clean Water Act, but they are clearly doing it in anticipation of what they, think will be coming down the road in terms of PFAS compounds in wastewater solids. So some pretty big dollars going out the door for some of these challenges across around lead service lines and PFAS, PFOA. And that is what I had to share with you guys today. Happy to address any other questions you guys have and talk about lead service line and PFAS or other drinking water, wastewater, stormwater challenges you want to talk about.
All right, that was great. Thanks for that presentation. Obviously, this will be made available to everyone to review after, but we have some time here for questions. If you would like to type them in the chat or come off, feel free to. Do have plenty of time.
I know it's a Monday morning, and nobody really wanted to talk about PFAS and lead service lines to kick off your week, but it's not the most uplifting topic, as we all know. But I got to believe that some of you are having some pretty big challenges with your communities around these two.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, if anybody would like to review this after, recording should be on our website.
I do want to mention something. Oops, sorry.
No,
I do want to mention something else about the lead service line inventory work. Part of the conversation that we've been having with some of the communities that we're working with here is what is a reasonable amount of money to spend on doing an inventory, and what's the value to you as a water system manager of getting that information. I think you're probably all aware, if you're aware of this requirement to share an inventory by October, that one of the options is to note that the material for the public or private side could be listed as unknown. So, and generally speaking, Pennsylvania DEP is looking for 2 points of data to confirm that the line, particularly on the private side, is not lead. So they want 2 points of data, and getting those 2 points of data may be sort of challenging and maybe kind of costly. So what we've been talking about with some of the communities that we're working with is, well, how can we start down this road? How can we at least get 1 point of data? That 1 point of data might still mean that you fill out the inventory as unknown, but you have a better sense of what's going on in your community and may be able to better identify strategies for getting that second point of data by, pursuing that first strategy. So that's I think that's a very valid concern, and I have not been advocating that any community spend, you know, as spend a ton of funding to make sure that they have a completed inventory by October if that is not something that they can fiscally do responsibly for their within their drinking water system. Ideally, we'd have a good sense of what's happening with your system by October, but you have to consider that within the context of the other challenges that you have and that are hitting your budget across the needs for your community system. So I just wanted to note that um, you know there are lots of things you got to consider with doing these inventories, and the cost of actually doing the inventory is one of them. It is one of the reasons, though, that we have been suggesting to community systems to be partnering with others in their community to help do some of the work, particularly around the surveys and or community engagement and education. So in Avondale, for example, we have engaged with a community-based organization called The Garage. They're going to be going around and they actually designed some of the communication pieces. They, the folks who are members of The Garage a lot of them live in the community. So when they go knock on doors, people know them. And so that's one of the benefits here is having somebody that community members might know doing some of the actual survey work and communications work. So that's an example of how to use some of the partnering to actually reduce your costs.
Yeah, especially with the lead service line inventory, it's so important to know guys and they might have some information that's not publicly available, but we do have some time here. If anybody would like to ask any questions, again, if anybody would like to see this recording, please contact us. Should be live, but.
Well, I'm also, even if you don't have a question, if you're willing to share your experience to date around the lead service line inventory work or the PFAS challenge in your community, that'd be great to hear.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really. The community aspect is a huge lift for this with the inventory, especially.
Mm-hmm.
I think community organizations really do have a big role with that. With the documentation, with the PFAS as well. We'll have to. Just seems like it's changing every day, really.
Yeah.
So it's very high RPM, if you will, virgin contaminant. Yep. So, well, Ellen, where can folks find you?
So, I'm going to put my email address and I'll link to the Water Center's webpage in the chat. You can find more information about this project on our webpage. I should also, I wasn't thinking about this, but I should go ahead and share the link for the intake form.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, I meant to have my email address in there too. And while we're based in, at the University of Pennsylvania, I do want to note we've been working with Mason and Kathy Tully a bunch in Southwest PA. We were out there at the end of last week. No, it was before that, 2 weeks ago. with with the Southwest PA Water Network, and did an information session about this program. So we're getting more and more familiar with the challenges in the communities in Southwest PA, and really have appreciated the partnership with Southwest PA Water Resources Center. So looking forward to continuing to support that work.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been very rewarding, very educational as well. And again, I shared my contact information in the chat as well.
Yeah, another project that's relevant to the region that you all may have heard about is the Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority's Stormwater Strategic Plan. The Water Center was part of the team that helped put that together. So, like I said, we do have projects across the state of Pennsylvania that we've been working on, and different partners that we've been working with on that.
Yeah, even if you have a concern that's not related to the topic today, if you're listening again, might have stormwater issues or flooding or water quality issues, those are also areas that we can provide assistance with. And again, all of our contact information is in the chat here. And any takers for any questions with our last couple minutes here?
Or willing to share your experiences?
Or share an experience? Alrighty, folks. Well, thanks for joining us this morning. If you have any concerns, questions, or anything, please feel free to reach out to me or Ellen. And again, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And Ellen, great presentation, very informative, very quick. So thank you very much. And we'd love to have you back on.
Hope everybody has a good day, and feel free to reach out if you have any other questions.
All right. And Ellen, thank you for coming.
No, thanks a lot.